it's Miss Amanda here. So today we're going to go over Curious George Plants a Seed and answer our WH questions about the story, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is review what we read in our story yesterday. So Curious George Plants a Seed. Bill the boy, oh, I skipped a page. Gotta always make sure we start at the beginning. There we go. Jumpy Squirrel was very busy. George was curious. What was Jumpy doing? Bill, the boy next door, told George Jumpy berries, acorns, and nuts. He stores them in the ground. He can dig them up later when he is hungry. That gave George a great idea. George buried the orange juice. He buried the butter. He buried the bread. He was glad to find a good place to store food. When the man with the yellow hat came home, the kitchen was empty. Where was all their food? George proudly showed his friend. George, orange juice and bread are not for burying, the man with the yellow hat said. They cannot be stored in the ground. He showed his friend George a peanut sprout. George was puzzled. This peanut grew into a plant, the man said. Seeds and nuts grow out of the ground if they are not eaten first. George thought that he understood. If a little peanut could become a big plant, what would a rubber band become? Would it become a feather? What would a feather become? George dug lots of holes. He buried lots of things. Soon the house was empty, and the man with the yellow hat was surprised. George, umbrellas and chairs are not for burying, the man with the yellow hat explained. They are made by people. They are not going to grow. Seeds and nuts will grow. A few days later, George saw something in the yard. It was a sprout. Look, George, said his friend. A seed you buried is growing. I wonder what it will be. Soon there was a beautiful sunflower in the yard. George had a green thumb after all. Grew a sunflower. Okay, good story. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little bit about our WH questions, okay? So our first question is asking who? Who was in the story? Well, one person I know was in the story, and that was George. So I'm just going to draw a little monkey here. Little monkey. Doesn't have to be perfect, as long as you know it's a monkey. And there was another character, and that was the man with the yellow hat. So we can draw him too. Here's the man. He's got kind of like a surprised face because he was surprised in this story. And we can add his yellow hat. All right, now we have talked about adding some words, okay, and sentences to our answers. So we're going to write Curious George because he was one of our characters, okay? Curious George. There's my C. U. R. I. O. U. S. Curious George. G. E. O. R. G. E. Curious George. And this George is spelled differently than the George in our class because the George in our class starts his name with J, right? Okay, what's next? What happened in the story? What happened in the story? Well, one of the things that I remember is George was being so silly and he was planting all kinds of crazy things in the backyard. So what I might want to do for this one is draw like a little mound of dirt. And maybe like the orange juice box is in there. Oh my goodness, there's the orange juice. So that's what happened in the story. But also, George learned about seeds and nuts. They grow into little plants. So I'm going to draw that too. Here's some little seeds. And we can also draw a little peanut. They talked about a little peanut in the story. And those are going to grow into little plants. Okay, so what are some words that we could write that tell us what this story was about? Well, what happened in the story, George plants a seed. So we can write that too. Planting seeds. And just make sure you're writing nice and slow so your writing is very nice and neat. Planting seeds. Okay, it's looking good so far. All right, where did this story happen? Well, one of the things that we can look at is we see a front door here. We also see, look, this is the backyard where there's a tree. There's the refrigerator. So we know that this happened right inside and right outside of George's house, okay? So what I'm gonna draw is a picture of George's house. Because we were inside the house for part of the story and we were outside the house for part of the story. So here's his house. And then also, there was a tree in the story. Could look a little bit like wood there. There we go. So we can give an example of George's house and backyard. Those are two words I'm going to write, okay? So, house. That's George's house. And where the tree was, the backyard. I'm going to write nice and slow so my handwriting is very neat. There we go. Okay, now this is going to be a good question. When did this story happen? When did this story happen? Well, we know things don't grow in the winter, right? Plants don't grow in the winter. When do plants grow? In the springtime, right? So we're going to write spring. Again, we can draw like some grass here. Maybe we'll draw George's sunflower. So the sunflower is brown in the middle. And it has some yellow leaves on the outside. And remember, it doesn't have to look perfect. Just have to get your point across so you can see that this is my flower. And I'm going to say when this happened was springtime. Writing nice and slow. Putting a space between my words. Springtime. Okay. Excellent. All right, I hope you guys had fun trying this at home. See you next time.